Welcome on in to Snow The Goalie, the only Flyers podcast, the People's Podcast, Players Podcast, Prognosticators Podcast, Pedialyte Podcast, Flyers made a few moves, Danny Briere's out there cooking podcast. I'm Russ Joy, joined, as always, by that absolute beaut, the beaut that you can see on the side of your screen. Bundy is here. Where's Anthony, you might ask? Anthony is somewhere in the Sunshine State. He will allegedly be checking in later. We don't know if he has a tan. We don't know if he's in a thong. We certainly hope not, at least to one of those things. But we'll get to him when he gets here as well. Lots to look forward to, but we do want to welcome a new sponsor to the show, and it's a heck of a day for a new sponsor to start off here with Snow The Goalie, the Only Flyers podcast. And that, of course, is Pennsylvania Recovery Center. So we welcome them to the show, and they picked a heck of an episode to start. And I know we're going to get into that here in a little bit, Bundy, but nice to have a new sponsor here right as we get ready for what really is going to be a playoff stretch, a playoff run, as indicated by some of the moves they've especially made today.
You know what? It's been a fun week, and I know that the festivities kind of started a couple days ago with the Walker trade, and we have lives, and we were not able to jump on right at the time. I was down at my girls' game at the regular season finale at Loyola, and Anthony's trying to get on different style banana hammocks down in the Tampa area. So we really couldn't do it, but that's why we're here now. Like we just said, let's just bang it all together here. We do the afternoon after recap of last night a little bit before we hit 3:00 and talk about some of the moves the Flyers have already made. And it was what I talked to Anthony earlier, and I said, what do you think, Anthony? Any word from Danny or Jonesy? And he said, it looks like they're going to just fill in the roster with some veteran experience, and that's pretty much exactly what they did. Eric Johnson's in here. Obviously, that he's a guy at the end of his career. Eric Johnson went for, I believe, a 4th-round pick to back to Buffalo. I forgot Eric Johnson was even there. I pay so little attention to Buffalo. Buffalo had a captain they traded. I didn't even know the guy was a captain. Yep. So Guy Lacpozo, and they wanted to send him to Florida and thank him for all the great playoff runs they've had in Buffalo over the years. And again, that's where they were at. And so Buffalo moving a lot of leadership and stuff off the top of their roster. But the Flyers, again, I know people are you say, well, why didn't we just keep playing those guys and Ginning and Adder instead of having a guy? And they played great last night. There's no doubt about it. For two guys that paired together or came up and they had to start the game together. It was a heck of an effort. I mean, last night was great. And I know we're kind of spitballing everything to kind of get into the 3:00, but last night, again, two things I got from last night. First was an outstanding job by the two young defensemen and Garnet Hathaway just doing plumber's work at the end. That's how you get the goal. He misses the redirection, stays in the battle, and is able to beat Bobrovsky. And then the other thing was Urson. He owns Florida. And you know what I love? Like, that's a huge thing to have because they're going to be good for a while. And if you have a goalie who's able to counter something because he feels good against them, and believe me, I mean, you think I like playing the Pittsburgh Penguins when I played? Of course I did. Everyone's got a certain team that they shine against, and that was Urson. So, again, it was a great win. It sets up what is a very, very difficult stretch. And you think to yourself for a sec, because I'm like a what-if guy, they got Tampa tomorrow night. And if you win that, you got yourself San Jose, where you're looking at a possible, I don't want to say it's a layup 2 points, but it's as quick a layup as you're going to find in today's NHL. So, Russ, I'll let you take it from here. They also picked up Dennis Gurianov, a right winger, for the much maligned Wade Allison. So it seems like every project that they have that didn't work here, Nashville decides they're going to take it and see if they can wash it off and wring it out and make something out of it. But it does give Wade a chance to play to see if they can find him, and it gives the Flyers a look at Gurianov, who's been around for a little bit.
And he was a guy that they had a lot of hope for when he was drafted. Yeah. And you know what? Like, ultimately, that's the move that I look at and I say, like, from today, and I say, you know what? What was the one thing that we kept talking about going into this week? It was try to get some guys that are change of scenery guys or might be reclamation projects, because you never know you never know what's going to happen. You know that as an organization, the Flyers had lost hope and they had lost faith in Wade Allison. Like, that for a fact. And then you move on. I don't know why Anthony wants a link. We're going to just use the Flyer social thing if we're going to stream Briere. Although I guess maybe he wants to film it with his own phone. So maybe we'll get the potato cam
down. And the banana hammock?
potato can.
Could you imagine
and the
if
banana.
could you imagine if Ant went up and he had a fucking banana hammock on and went up the porch and said, "Yo, what up, dude? What's shaking, brother? What up, dog?"
I'll tell you what, we would absolutely lose access. Did the Bundy bomb blow you away? There you are. That would, I mean, talk about a way to alienate yourself. I mean, we'd go from like
that silly podcast
to like, I don't know, that harassment podcast or something, right? Like, I don't even know what we would do. Ant just texted me now. He goes, I mean, I can do it by hand. I think he's referring to the press conference, but with Anthony, you just never know. I guess I'll send it to him. But listen, the Gurianov thing, when you look at it, you say they had already given up on Wade Allison. They had no faith in his ability to kind of stay healthy, one. And two, I think they had very clearly given up on him as an NHL prospect. So in Gurianov, you're getting a guy that like another team had thought at some point was worthy of a decent pick. And you say, all right, like we're going to give it a shot. Like, let's see if there's anything to it. And it's one of those moves that like, look, it might end up being nothing. And like maybe Gurianov becomes nothing but like a minor leaguer for this team and his contract runs out and, you know, you just kind of wash your hands of it. But I'm always a big fan of the idea of saying like, hey, we're going to take a shot. Especially if what you're trading away is a given and it's something that you know in your heart of hearts you're just not willing to try to, fix, which in this case was Allison.
Yeah, and again, like, and it also comes down to how much, how much opportunity you guys had. Are you willing to kind of stay in that fight a little bit? I don't want to say Allison was maligned. He just, watching him here, he just didn't have that push. Like some guys will find that other gear where, you'll endear yourself to somebody. And he just wasn't able to do that. To me, he's a guy that can skate pretty good. He'd had a couple injuries, but he couldn't find going to the front of the net as a normal task in the league. And when you don't do that and you rely on your shot, that becomes an easy player to defend. And in the league today, if you're not pushing the pace a little bit, and there's going to be a lot of transition in this league now. I mean, you look through, I look at Louis up here, just put a comment down, and I kind of spit it out earlier about like the NHL Trade Deadline and the guys twiddling their thumbs. I watched a little bit of that earlier, and they're waiting for deals to happen. And it's not like 1998 anymore where there's no salary cap and there's a plethora of wealthy teams that pull off those trades. The Flyers were one of them, Rangers at the time. But you are going to see that starting to happen a little bit. And, and you're going to see a lot of depth guys, I think, over time, younger guys that are just going to get moved where teams are not going to have that relationship with long-term veterans that they used to have, because you're going to start swapping player for player on your depth chart, because you want to maybe have a reclamation project. Maybe Gurianov, somebody say, hey, we could turn this guy around, and maybe someone in Nashville saying, hey, I kind of like this Wade Allison. I saw him in the minors this year. But that's what happens, and I do think there's going to be a lot of flip-flopping over the coming years for each other's depth players, because some teams, if you don't have a guy that you're happy with, you're going to end up shipping it off.
Yeah. And look, there's things that I'm sure that we want to get into here. And I think that we have to have a conversation about like what some of today's moves might have meant. But let's take this back to a little bit earlier in the week, the thing that we missed out on, talking about in the moment. The Flyers made a decision to re-sign one of their defensemen and to send out one of their other ones. Now, up until like 2 weeks ago, the prevailing wisdom had been they were more interested in keeping Sean Walker and trying to keep him at like a $4-ish million cap hit versus meeting Nick Seeler at what had been put out there as a potential $3.5-4 million asking price by his agent. And we went back and forth on Press Row Show, and you and I were kind of on the same page with it. Ant was like very animated. Ant gets very emotionally attached to some of his arguments sometimes. I think we all do. But Ant was like ready to rationalize potentially tying up $7-8 million between those two guys. The Flyers ultimately decide that, hey, you know what? We can get Nick Seeler what we think is a good cap hit, $2.7 million for 4 years, no movement clause for the first 2 years. And we're going to send away Sean Walker, who we weren't close with, at least in terms of maybe was it the AAV, was it the extra year, whatever it was. Not only did they move off of what they didn't want to pay, but even more importantly, they got back a first-round pick. Now, we've talked about this a lot, but for people who are new to the show, in the offseason, we talked about the fact that, like, no one knew what Sean Walker was. Nobody had any kind of expectations for Sean Walker. If you had told any of us last offseason that when the deadline comes around, Sean Walker is going to get you a first-round pick. No one would have believed it. And yet, he overperformed. He played extremely well. He was a good guy in the locker room. He was very well liked. And he was respected. And he was respected by his teammates, by the coaching staff, by the front office. But ultimately, they moved off of him, which is interesting, Bundy, because they did make some other moves, especially today, that are indicative of a team that's trying to make some fringe moves for a playoff run. So it is interesting that they moved arguably one of their top 3 defensemen this year at the deadline. But do you think it just came down to that was an offer that you can't refuse, a first-round pick?
Yeah, and again, like I'll tell you what where I see Danny, the situation he had to deal with. So he comes into this year, he has an overachieving hockey team, a team that's worked their balls off. They've provided energy nightly, good goaltending, and they've made hay out of not a whole lot that was there before, except their own reputations coming in. So here's what happened. They actually found out they could salvage some players. I mean, we've seen a lot of guys go through the mill this year, right? We saw injury to Cates. We saw Morgan Frost just being hammered early in the year. We saw an effort to get Tyson Forster going, and it appears he's really become a good young hockey player. But what Danny happened was with that coming, I don't think that they really saw this team as being like a playoff team. And I don't think that anybody else really saw like the Islanders slipping, the Devils slipping down as much. Now, I know they're there. I know they're kind of behind them, but nobody saw the Devils firing Lindy Ruff with 20 games to go. I mean, people say, oh, I did see it, but again, they just re-signed him. I think it was a new deal was coming into place if it wasn't already. So Danny had to, you can't just take and tear everything down at the deadline. That might have been their plan, saying we're going to move this, and this, and we have a plan. But at the same time, the way the players have played for you, you have to honor that to some degree. You have to reward your players. And I think that's kind of the little bit of the inside straight he had to pull, both for the fans, for the fan base here, and for the players and the management. So he had to kind of suffice everybody while not blowing everything up. There's a summer also. And believe me, if anyone said that we thought we'd make the playoffs this year, this has been an unbelievable run. I mean, the way that they've won games, 4 points in Florida against that team, they've done things that earn them the right to have a chance to try to make the playoffs moving from this point in. And Danny's given them that chance. I know people are going to say, well, Eric Johnson's playing in front of Added or Ginning, and Gurianov plays in front of Brink. But you know what? They're just guys that have had moments in playoffs, and Danny, to me, is doing the right thing. And he's kind of playing both sides of it, while also giving everybody that deserves it, the 23 players on your roster, an opportunity to play in the spring. And
I want to get back to,
I'm just looking to see if any more trickle-in stuff's coming.
Well, I want to get back to the Johnson thing, but there actually was a good move. Vegas.
Hurdle.
I mean, Florida and Vegas are going. Vegas just got Thomas Hurdle.
Yeah, I saw that for
which
a
is
TBD.
Which is a wild move. Wild. He's got 58 points on the season, and they got him for a TBD.
I hope that TBD doesn't bite the Flyers in the ass on Tuesday night. I don't think so. But that's, again, it's weird when you see it to be determined. So that's going to be predicated on how far Vegas goes in the playoffs.
Yeah,
that's
it will
what
be.
That's what that will.
Well, and that's after they got Hannafin, right? And Mantha this week. So, like, they've had a big week, Vegas has. Florida's had a big week. You see the teams that really do think that they've got a shot to go for it, really going for it. Which, look, in a league where the cap has remained flat for as long as it has, and, we talk about how difficult it is to navigate the salary cap. Like, there are teams that are creative enough and are able to figure out their, ways to not manipulate the cap, but get deals done. And we'd be remiss if we didn't point out the fact that the Flyers also played, the broker on both sides in a deal earlier this week, picking up a 5th-round pick in the process. Mm-hmm. Like, the Flyers, to their credit, they've done on the salary retention side of things, they've done exactly what we had kind of hoped they would do and what we imagined that they would do, right?
It's what they could do.
Yes.
Given the circumstances and the shifting motion and movement of what this team became in the year.
Yes.
You can't just toss the team out and give them no help when you've had injured players and injured defensemen. You had 2 young guys that played great last night. That's the part of Danny and Jonesy understanding that you have to give these guys an opportunity. And yes, but the Walker trade, Walker was getting to a point where, you're really going to you would have really had to put money into an aging player at the end of the day that had really a good year coming off some injuries. You saw this year how good he was, but he's 29 years old.
Mm-hmm.
You wish that was a 20, 24, 25-year-old
Yeah,
player
if
like
Sean
that.
Walker were 24, this would have been a very different conversation.
Well, it would have been. He would have been signed. Yeah, I mean, he would have been, a top young developing defenseman.
Look, I think that I kind of, I guess, came around a little bit on the Sealer move because it was sub 3. And, if we go back, like I'm not as much of a hypocrite, I guess, in this, but like I've been saying, your team should be able to find guys that can play on a third pair. Now, I do have concerns about like, all right, no movement clause for 2 years, not ideal. He is 31. But if you feel like you're now clearing up a spot and like we expect them to try to make a Risto trade in the offseason, in theory, you're hoping that you're going to have one spot open for an Addard maybe or someone to try to make the roster out of camp next year. Like maybe you're going to turn over one of the spots to a younger guy. Are we going to maybe see like Nick Sealer paired with Cam York next season as the steady veteran next to him? Like that might make sense. And honestly, that might not be the worst thing in the world. I am a little bit not beside myself, but there are a few things that they've done here that I'm a little, but I want to get to this really quick because Tony Lewis sent over a super chat, which we are always grateful for. Thank you, Tony. Briere would have traded Sealer if he was offered a first-round pick, though, right?
It depends where. Yeah, I can't imagine.
I would think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Their problem
you have
is,
to. Just from an age standpoint, 100%. But again, going back to the other night, we were pretty adamant about, or I was, discussing the number, and I said if you can get him around 2.5, you keep him. And 2.7 was a number. We were hearing 3, 5, and 4, and I'm like, there's no way. You cannot give him that kind of money.
I mean, he's got to ask for it. He's got to ask for a high number, and then try to meet in the middle. You don't want to undercut yourself, but
that deal is a really good deal for everybody.
Yeah, it's solid enough. And like, all right, I made this case the other day when Anthony was like, yelling about the cap and cap going up. But like, just because you do have some cap money coming in doesn't mean you immediately have to light it on fire. It's that like old adage of like the money burning a hole in your pocket. Like you don't have to waste it. In this case, 2.7 is not big. It's a $2 million increase over what the guy is making right now. And like you expect that you're going to be able to move off some other money. I haven't really seen that many people that hate the Sealer move. I think that in the moment it was like, oh shit, because that happened and then the Walker deal happened. So I think when you couple the two things together, you say, all right, it's not that bad. And they just simply were not going to try to make this playoff run. Risto's out, Drysdale's out. They weren't going to play Jennings and Addard along like as part of this as like the third pair or whatever from now for a playoff run. Now, whether you agree with that or disagree with that, or if that's the right thing or wrong thing developmentally, it's up to you. I still think that there are some disappointing parts to this. I do think that Johnson is a move that I would not have made. I don't think Johnson is somebody who like, I don't fully understand that one yet. I don't necessarily.
It's just depth at the deadline. It gives them an extra body, an extra defenseman. And again, like who knows what's going to happen, right? Like, I mean, again, I don't know. Can this team go out and make a mess for somebody in the first round? Maybe. I don't know if it's Carolina. I mean, do I think so? I don't know, Russ. I didn't think they beat Florida last night. I mean, I haven't thought they beat, but they did. You know, so again, it's to me, this is about work. And the one thing the Flyers did prove to me last night, they've done it repeatedly. They play a very good, like, postseason style type of game. I mean, there was not a lot of space on the ice last night. That was Florida and the Flyers. And, if you can play that kind of hockey, you could take a skilled team and really muck it up on them like a Carolina. Like, I don't think Carolina is conducive to playing, a board in type of game. Like, I think that they feel like that's maybe where they can have success. So we'll see what happens. I'm not willing to say that just yet, but there's a pathway for the Flyers to win a round. I see it. And people might say I'm crazy, but the way they work, and if they can play like that every game, you never know what happens and get that kind of goaltending. The trade anniversary of
Philip Albert here with we celebrating the 20-year trade anniversary of Bundy.
No, but you know what? I'm just gonna to make this very quick. When you trade two veteran defensemen that were still viable then, and you end up playing Sammy Kapanen on your back line, you get what you get. That sucked. 2004, I'm sure, was a shame. I would have loved to have been here because I think I had one more trick up my sleeve left, and it might have been in one of those big series that you needed someone to shut down. I went to Dallas and had a great run. but the team said wheels had come off a little bit there. I missed it. I wish it didn't happen, but life goes on, and you move on. And I came back the year after, and all loved here in Philly, Russ. But yeah, that was 20 years ago.
20 years ago.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's just
funny. What year was that in your career?
That was like 10.
Okay. So you were 10 years in. I was at my middle school prom when the Flyers got knocked out of the playoffs that year. So I feel your pain.
Yeah. You know what? That's what happens. Life goes on, right? I mean, there's worse things that happen than getting traded. It just that it was just the circumstances after, it's like, wow, geez. I mean, imagine having I can't. How is Sammy Kapanen playing D for us right now?
Oh, geez, Louise. One interesting thing that came of this week is the move that brought Johansson in. He's not going to play here, presumably. Briere came out and said that they were looking for a team to take him on. They were apparently even willing to eat some of the cap hit. Now, for those who might not have followed along with this, half of his salary was already being retained by Nashville. And so in theory, the Flyers are only on the hook for $4 million of the $8 million that was on his contract for this year. And they could have potentially offered another team like, say, $2 million just to take him off their hands. And then you're getting him for $2 million against your cap. But
do we know anything about that?
We just know that there were a couple of things where, like, his relationship with that locker room where he just came from apparently became fractured. There was something that came up, and his side of things hasn't been reported, but it's just that, like, something happened a few weeks ago and it soured the relationship there. And apparently he and Torts didn't exactly have a warm and fuzzy relationship in the past. And so they didn't acquire him with the intention of playing him. So they're going to, they put him on waivers. He could report to the Phantoms. If he's a guy that, like, there's a locker room issue, or, like, he could potentially, I don't want to say poison the well, but, like, I don't know if I want him around the Phantoms players. Like, I don't know if I want him around the prospects if he's going to be a net negative, right? Because he probably views himself as an NHL player. And if nobody wants him and he doesn't want to play in the A, I don't see how you could spin that into being something positive. What would you say? Like, if that is the case, if he is a guy who does not want to play in the AHL, are you better off just having him stay home?
It depends what the stipulation is. I mean, if they send him to the minors and he's got
already
that
did.
contract,
He went through waivers, right? So
yeah, I would ski with behind the bus with wheels on the skis if they're going to pay me. For that kind of money, for the rest of the year, he'd be stupid to not, to be suspended and not get paid. So try to get more in that. But I also, and you're right. If he's a malcontent and you're trying to, especially Torts, right? He loves talking about how he cleaned up the locker room and got rid of all the poison last
addition
summer.
by subtraction.
Yeah, addition by subtraction, got rid of, cleaned up the room by himself. And so I don't think that they'd ever want another guy in there like that because, they've come so far this year. And rightly so.
Yeah. So that I guess wraps up that part. We talked about Gurianov. We talked about that deal. I don't think that there are any expectations for him, right? Johnson, I guess you would expect is Johnson now like is he now a third pair guy? Do you think they're going to want to play Johnson over Stahl? Are they going to have Johnson and Stahl in the lineup? Like, where do you see that one playing out?
That's actually a really good question. I have to count the defense and see where they are in terms of health. Johnson, he was pretty good a couple of years ago when they won the cup. He was just getting older and he'd been there forever.
Yeah. All right. So
to me, he'd be better than Stahl because I still think he's a better skater.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say about that. Do we know if Danny's going to be on, Russ? Or
he's supposed to be coming on at 3:15. He's supposed to be addressing the media. Now, whether Ant comes on with the potato cam or they put it out through YouTube or through Twitter, we should be fine to tap into that. We're just kind of, I think, awaiting the press conference there with his comments. It does appear as though the Flyers are done. They are not expected to make a... Oh, no. Do you see this text from Ant?
I I haven't.
They
been
are
paying him.
trying to acquire Sidney Crosby. There's no way he's serious.
Who's trying to acquire Crosby?
The Flyers. Look at this text. I'm just kidding. I wanted to see. I wonder how many people at home are like, holy shit, this can't happen. No. I'm just kidding. No.
Holy fuck, Russ. What the hell are you doing?
You know
I'm
what,
like,
though?
what?
So,
I actually, there was a rumor going around that Colorado was going to try to get Crosby because him and McKinnon, they're both from Cole Harbor. And I actually thought that did make sense. And then if he wanted to go back to Pittsburgh into the, finish up there.
yeah.
But that was an interesting one.
Yeah, you know what? I actually don't have a problem. Listen, I think any team, if there's a chance to go after a guy like Crosby, right? I think it just comes down to that sends one hell of a message. Crosby's not happy that Gensel got traded. He looked he apparently is very dejected by that move. It's very clear that Pittsburgh is admitting they are not going to make a playoff run. It's all over for them. I think that's a hard thing for a guy like Crosby to accept. I don't know. I can't imagine he wants to go play anywhere else. I feel like he's one of those guys that wants to retire with the team that drafted him. I could be wrong. But
yeah, I mean,
if I were him though, and a Colorado were an option, hell yeah. Why would you not want to,
Yeah, just for the year. I mean, again, he's got 3 Stanley Cups. He's been the captain of the team doing it. But I mean, again, he's very close with McKinnon. They're both from Cole Harbor, Nova Scotia. It made sense actually when I heard that. And I'm like, well, just as a rental and then come back. And I don't know if you could work something out like that. But yeah, I mean, Crosby last night, people are talking about, man, he looked bummed out last night. I saw a couple of the interviews, and he loses a guy that's been just his lockstep for years, right? And has probably been one of certainly his best winger, I think, in Pittsburgh. But it'll be interesting to see. But Pittsburgh looks like that is pretty much done. And if they are indeed done for what they are, then we'll see what Crosby and Malcolm, what happens with them at the end of the year. They got guys. The problem with them is they got no D. They have no D.
Do you see this? Hurdle got traded for 3 things. Edstrom, a first and a third. And where's it at? Sean C. says the Sharks are retaining 17% of his salary for 6 years. 17%. I don't know how much he's making, but 17% of his salary for 6 years. I don't know if San Jose is trying to win. I don't. Oh, let's see. Ant is here. Let's see. Ant is trying to point the camera at the table. I'm going to mute Ant here for a second so we can show people. That is the table that Danny Briere will be sitting at. We'll find out pretty soon if Ant is able to hear us or if he has headphones in or if our voices are just going to start to echo, reverberate around that room. I don't know which reporters are down in Florida right now, but Anthony is there. It looks as though that's not full potato cam, Bundy. That's at least...
that's not bad.
That's not too bad. That's kind of that's like beyond the Motorola Razr. I think we're kind of looking at like a 2012 cell phone, like an iPhone 3GS level video right now. And you know what? For Ant, that's not so bad. I can report that intern Andrew is not with Ant down in Florida. So he's not there. Ant did not take a tripod with him to shoot the video here. So I'm just trying to get over the fact, 17% retention for 6 years. That's not a move that you see many teams make. Usually retention's 2 years, not 6.
So that's 17, so 20. So 5th of 8, it's like $1.5 million a year is what they have to pay. Because I think it's around 8 his salary. So I'm just guesstimating.
Yeah. I mean,
there it is.
Get a first back.
3.84. Yeah, there it is. Thank you, Ryan Guy. He's making 8.13, and 17 would be $1.384 million a year. Okay, that's just that's unbelievable.
You know what that is, though, Bundy? So, all right, let's play this out so I'm not a total hypocrite. The cap is going up, and if you are going to light some cap space on fire, I don't know what year that first-round pick is in. It's obviously not going to be a very good one because it's Vegas, but it is a first-round pick. Is a first-round pick worth burning 1.3 for the next 6 years? I don't know. If it helps you move up in the draft and get a guy that you think can actually be something, then it probably is, right? It's maybe. I don't know. I don't know.
It's crazy. I mean, you're going to start seeing a lot of crazy things like that, right? With in the
Yeah.
salary cap that they're in, but that's a really really strange deal. I mean,
Yeah.
he was their centerpiece. The problem is they had nothing there, like in San Jose. Now they really have nothing,
Yeah.
and they come in the
It's
Philly on
bad.
Tuesday night. So I mean, it's bad. That's a team. I mean, you look at San Jose. I mean, at least the Flyers had salvageable players. They built guys up this year. I mean, San Jose has nothing,
Yeah.
nothing.
Yeah. It's bad.
Absolutely nothing. The only thing they've been able to do is dump salary, some of it, with Carlson last summer to Pittsburgh, which is, believe me, and when you look at Pitt, that's been part of the problem.
Yeah.
Him and Letang are like they don't even play D. They've been in watching Pittsburgh lose these last few games. They've been a huge part of it, like a major part of what Pittsburgh's decimation is down the home stretch is those guys.
Matt Beagle checks in here, says Briere is going to be looking for the intern Andrew handshake. And he won't be there, so that's pretty sad. Hey, Bundy, before we get to Danny Briere and his comments on the trade deadline, you want to let people know about PA, Pennsylvania Recovery Center. I keep calling them PA Recovery Center. Pennsylvania Recovery Center.
Great people. I got involved with them, Russ, about 2.5 years ago, and it's been one of the great things I've done. And I know that one of the things we do, we spend our time helping people with addiction issues or mental health issues. We have 4 centers in and around the area. We have a sober living and mental health housing as well that go along with. So it's been a great, great endeavor in my life, getting to help people. And that's just what we do. When I'm not doing this and doing Flyers games, I'm out representing Pennsylvania Recovery Center. I'm glad they came on as a sponsor. I talked to our good friend, Brent Norton. And so really it really is one of the great prideful things I've had a chance to do in my life and given to others that are struggling like I once was and came out the other side of it. Anything you need, we'll get the graphics up, but Pennsylvania Recovery Center will have a phone number. And if you need us,
phone number's in the description of the episode, 610-233-4342. It's in the description of the episode, regardless of if you're watching on YouTube or if you're over on Facebook or if you're listening after the fact in the podcast feed. 610-233-4342. You can call them if you're in need of, if you or someone you know is in need of, detox or rehab.
Yep.
You can give them a call for an assessment today.
Yep. One of the best things too is that if say you have somebody, a loved one struggling, a coworker, you literally call us and we'll take it from soup to nuts. If that person needs to go away to detox, get away for 30 days to a residential place, we'll get them there. When they get out, Pennsylvania Recovery Center in the Delaware Valley is the aftercare that you're going to want to get to. Accept all kinds of insurance. It's got a lot of love and a lot of heart, and we don't hold anything down financially. Some people can't do anything with their finances. It doesn't mean anything to us. We'll take you in. We'll give you the care you need and the hug that you most certainly will need. And hopefully you'll be on your way. And I never see you again unless you want to send me a Christmas card. And that's really our mission. Get you healthy, get you feeling good about yourself, and get you living life again. So thanks very much, Pennsylvania Recovery Center. Thank you for giving us this sponsorship opportunity.
Absolutely. Hey, one other thing here, and I saw this, and I think that this is actually a pretty interesting point. It's not one that we talked about, but it might have to do with Gurianov. So CMZ asks, Atkinson should be in the press box for a little bit with Danny getting Gurianov, right? I think a lot of people looked at it and said, well, Gurianov might make it into the lineup, and then maybe you would see a guy like a Bobby Brink come out. But given Atkinson's play over the last, what feels like month and a half, is it possible that Torts takes the veteran out and allows a younger guy like a Brink to try to still find his way? I would expect that Licksell's going to get scratched or sent down quite a bit, but like, who do you think gets the scratch? Will it be Atkinson or will it be Brink if they want to have Gurianov in?
It should be Atkinson, but whether or not it is will depend on the coach. I don't know. I know what I would do. I would give Brink the shot at it. I mean, he came up, he scored 2 goals in the 2 games. We got a lead for the team. I think some players in this league, and you're seeing a little bit, there's a lot of aging veterans getting shipped around. And I don't know if Danny, I don't know if he was allowed, but I would have thought Atkinson, I would have thought they would have at least tried to move him. But clear, it'd be hard to get a team to take him right now.
Yeah, I mean, when you came into the season, like we even asked Jonesy when we first announced the partnership with the team, the names Atkinson and Stahl came up. as being guys that, like, do you want to see, does it matter if you can see if like Atkinson can stay healthy? Is that part of what goes into the calculus on whether or not you're willing or able to move him at the deadline? Stahl obviously was signed in large part due to the fact that they had hoped that he would help culture-wise and then probably get dealt at the deadline, but he has not played particularly well. Unless there is a last-second move here, Stahl will not be moved. He will remain here. So that playoff run that he wanted to get, I guess, will be here in Philadelphia. Whether he plays or how much he plays, I guess, remains to be seen. But that's certainly interesting. Atkinson, his play is just such a disappointment, I think, especially with how strong he started the season. For him to fall off the way that he has, it's just...
He can't keep up anymore. He can't get to the play. When he gets to it, the puck's already moved. There's no board battle. I mean, from the inside dots to the outside of the board, it doesn't exist. He's late to every play on the ice. I'm not slating him. I've been there, you know.
But we're being realistic.
Look at me. I got my jock strap toasted there. I saw it on TV the other night by Ovechkin. Everybody falls off where they once were, and that's life, you know. And unfortunately, he's here. But you know, again, they got a guy to come in here. They have Brink. To me, the way the team plays, he's the one guy that can't play the way the rest of the guys are playing on the forward lines. And that's not a slight or a slap at him. It's just a reality. Just watch the video. It's there every single game. And that's why, you know, and I'm sure Torts likes him. Like, he played for him. He played good for him. He scored 40 goals for him in Columbus. He's seen it sucks when you've seen a different version of a guy. He's not the same player anymore. That's hard, you know, to reconcile what he once was, but he's not. And so what do I think? If I'm coaching this team, he's not in the lineup if I have a healthy group of guys.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. We got a real big super chat in here from Chris, who left it and said appreciation for Bundy. Send a $10 super chat over. It's very kind of you, Chris. You
don't ever have to do that.
Chris, we don't have to say. Yeah. Listen, we've had 3 people send us super chats, which we are always grateful for. We always appreciate, but you don't have to. But by all means, you certainly can.
Get you a new mug warmer, eh, Russ?
Hey, you know what?
You, Chris.
Here's something that people actually want to see and hear from Danny Briere talking to the media down there in the Sunshine State. Let's go to him now.
Erik Johnson, obviously you were, I assume, looking for some depth on D. Is it also somewhat of a reward to the group for putting themselves in the position that they have?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. We removed a pretty big piece in Sean Walker, and the guys have worked extremely hard to get us to the point that gotten us this year. I'm not expecting and asking Erik Johnson to replace Sean Walker. What we're looking for from Erik is to bring his experience, the fact that he's played for a long time, the fact that he's played a lot of playoff games, the fact that he's won a Stanley Cup. Hopefully he can, share a little bit of that with our group, with our young group, especially on defense right now with all the injuries too that we have. It's a pretty young group, so we're hoping that he can share a little bit of his experience with our team. That's kind of the reason behind the whole time, going into the season. That was part of bringing a guy like Mark Stahl, who's done a tremendous job with our young guys, and then now in this position now with the injuries, we're even younger. Mark Stahl has been amazing this season for us. Like, all this experience that he was able to share, I think he's made guys like Zamula and Cam York even better. So maybe a little bit more of that with Erik Johnson.
With regards to Erik Johnson, he's obviously had a really impressive career. He's definitely on the older side now, but I think there's some perception that his game that he's did the last couple of years. Why do you think he can help you guys over this last little bit and try to make this playoff push?
Well, it's mostly his experience, what he can share with our group, maybe bring a little bit of stability, back there, and being comfortable in the moment. When you have guys that have played as many playoff games as he has, it's an asset, and he can help a group that is on the younger side. That's just a reality. Our guys have played extremely well. We've been impressed with how they've played the last few games, some really tough games. But at the end of the day, it's still a young team. So that's where a guy like Erik Johnson hopefully might be able to help.
How do you view Gurianov and how he would fit in here?
Gurianov?
Yeah.
That came about. I mean, he's interesting. Being 6'3" left winger that can skate like him. The fact that he's had some success in some big games. He's had a pretty interesting playoff run a few years ago. I know it's been a little tougher for him the last couple of years, but again, it's if he catches fire again, we're a little thin on the left side, and he brings us speed and size. So who knows where that goes? And there's a little bit of fact that Wade Allison probably needed a change of scenery for his development. It's been a rough season for Wade, so we wanted to give him the chance, maybe to catch fire on his side, on his end too, and kind of kickstart his career again, because it's been tough for him.
So is Gurianov going to start on the NHL roster, or is he going to?
He will. He's coming here. He's going to meet us here. So as far as the roster for the game tomorrow, that I don't know. That you'll have to ask Torts on that.
How would you characterize the afternoon? Were you fielding calls, or were you making any calls, or how did it shake out?
There was a lot of sharing with our group, looking at all possibilities, who was out there, how could we improve our team. Obviously, we were bargain shopping to a little bit, so we had to be aware of that. At the end of the day, we had 11 picks going into the draft, and we still have 10. So just losing one pick and not in the first two rounds, so that was something that we weren't ready to do. So we're excited. I think at the end of the day, it's a good day for us.
Dan, you mentioned yesterday that you were going to try to find Ryan Johansson a new home. Obviously, that didn't happen.
Yeah.
Did the offer just not materialize? And what comes next for him? Does he go to the AHL? How are you guys going to play this?
Yeah, we didn't have a lot of talks, but there was a select few teams that kind of danced around. But at the end of the day, nobody was willing to make the move. We were willing to retain on him too. Unfortunately, it just didn't pan out. So at this time, we're going to ask him to report to Lehigh Valley, and hopefully, we can get it going again. And things change fast in hockey. You never know. So hopefully for him, he can get it going in Lehigh Valley, and we'll see where that goes. I really don't know what the next step after this will be for him.
Have you talked? Did you get a message at all to Scott Lawton leading up to the deadline that he wasn't going anywhere? Because obviously his name was out there. He talked about it openly. Did you maybe call him at some point? Was he relieved?
Yes, and I was honest with Scott from the beginning, just like I've been with you guys. My job as a general manager is to listen to what's out there, and I told him that. And Scott and I have a special relationship because we've played together. When you've played with someone, there's a bond that forms there. It's just the way it is. We've said it from the get-go. We're trying to be as honest as we can with our players, especially with Scott, and that bond that we have. So I was upfront with him. I told him that I probably I wasn't shopping him, first of all. I wasn't going to trade him for fair value, because he's more than fair value to us. The intangibles that he brings in the locker room is something that has no price, and the other teams don't see that, but we do. And I told him that. I said, we're not going to trade you if it's just a fair trade. Someone would have to overstep and really knock it out of the ballpark for us to consider it. And yes, I did listen. I had a lot of teams interested in him. As you can imagine, there's not a lot of centerman, and he's a good one. So the good thing for him, as I said, teams around the NHL still value you. So I think that's exciting for him, but not good enough for us to let a player like that go. That is critical to the development of our locker room, and our young guys around him.
Can you talk about that a little bit more, as far as from that perspective, that you say teams from around the league don't know what you know? Maybe that way you can present it for the public as well. Like, what don't they understand? What don't people understand that you need more than fair value to move a player like that?
Yeah, well, if you look at, I think some of the quotes that came out from some of the players, our coaches' quotes, that tells you a lot of what people think. And, I'm aware of that. I talk to the players. I've had people come to me and say, we need him for this stretch. And obviously, it's teammates supporting teammates, which is great. But, we started, when we hired Torts, we started kind of changing the culture a little bit. And without Sean Couturier around the dressing room last year, Scott was probably the guy that stepped up the most and started working on that culture change. And then this year, coming into the season, again, he was one of the leaders. He's still one of the leaders in that department. It's the way he treats his teammates, his coaches, the ways. We have a term in French that I can't seem to get. It's like he brings people together.
What's the term in French?
Rassembleur. So so he's someone that brings people together, and it would have been scary to let a guy go like that, especially in the situation that we're in, that we're trying to make the playoffs.
Danny, going to this deadline, I think you guys have obviously said that you're rebuilding, but I think a lot of people were looking at this deadline as a way to figure out exactly what that meant, what your definition of a rebuild was and how you guys were going to execute it. Is it fair to say that the avenue you guys are taking is a rebuild, but with a very strong emphasis upon the culture aspect and trying to always balance those two things?
Yes, I think that's fair to say. The culture is we felt the first thing that needed to change around here. I didn't like how our team was playing the last few years. We were a team that was easy to play against. And for me, and I've said that before, I think the first step in that change was John Tortorella. Brought an identity to our team, forced our players to play a certain way that makes it tough to face. He's you look at our team, we're really in-your-face type of team. We try to take time and space away from the other team, and that makes it really tough. Just talking to different players around the league and executive, everybody, that's the one thing that keeps coming up is how hard we are to face. And it's not just when I say that, people assume right away it's just the physicality side of it, but it's more than that. It's the time and space that the players are allowed or given on the other side that makes it tough. They don't have time or a lot of time to make plays. It's always tough. So that was probably the first step. Now, I have to give our coaches and our players a lot of credit for the way they've played. I've said it many times. We didn't expect to be where we are at this stage of the season. We hope to play meaningful games, but to be inside that playoff bubble, third in our division, that's probably above what we expected. So, that's even more exciting. So that's, it's all coming together, but it doesn't change at the end of the day what we're trying to do and having an outlook towards the future, making sure that it's sustainable for years to come and not just 1 year.
But is it fair to say that, while you guys are certainly accumulating assets, you traded Sean Walker for a first-round pick, that your vision of this being sustainable requires the culture to be strong as well?
That was the first step for us to have success down the road, to develop players the right way, You can acquire all the assets that you want, but if you don't, and you can look at other teams that do that, they acquire assets, but it's tough when you don't have the right culture to develop those guys. That's another reason why player development was also an important part of our, readjustment that we made this summer. That all comes together, and then who knows what's going to happen. I don't want to talk about next year, but who knows what next year, that'll be a different story. But it's not just about this year or next year. It's about 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years down the road too, that we make sure we get better and better and become Stanley Cup contenders.
I guess 1 or 2 more.
Do you feel like you hit all the boxes on your checklist for the trade deadline?
I don't know. I didn't have a checklist per se. It's more about adjusting along the way, and because things change. I mean, there's all kinds of things going on all day. You're getting different calls, different players. It changes from 1 minute to the next. The one thing that we had going in today, I think we wanted to provide a little bit of depth and experience on defense after having lost Sean Walker. So that was the major one, without spending high-end asset. So that was done. The Gurianov is a nice little ad that we had to adjust along the way that we were excited about.
What was it like for you going through this process for the first time as a GM?
It was interesting. Learned a lot. Probably the thing that I'm most proud of is how we all work together. In that room, we had Jonesy, Dan Hilferty stopped by. It was fun to have him around and see how everything was working. Our management, the assistant GMs were all there. The analytics guys were involved with what they were doing. Our pro scouts with what they had to see. What I'm most proud of is how we all worked together, and everybody had a say, and everybody had an opinion, and that's probably the best part about how it worked today for me personally. It's my first one. I don't know if it's normal or not, but I had a fun day.
It was just in like a big suite here or something, all sitting around.
In a little conference room. Yeah. So.
Last one. Going back real quick, you talked a little bit earlier about Wade Allison, about that he might benefit from a change of scenery. I'm curious as to why you think it got to the point where he needed a change of scenery. I know he's popular in that room. He was popular with the fans. Spent a lot of time with the team last year.
Yeah.
Why do you think it got to the point where he needed a change of scenery?
Yeah, that's a good question. He came in. We had him penciled into our roster at the beginning of the season, going into the training camp. And, I still remember my first speech to the players was, don't take anything for granted. This is not charity. You have to keep pushing the envelope. And, his camp was just okay. And then all of a sudden, Forster and Brink, who we didn't have penciled in, came out of nowhere, and not really out of nowhere because we had high hopes down the road for them, but showed that they were more prepared right away than we expected. And they took his spot, and I don't know, it's like he just couldn't get out of it after, couldn't recover. And those two guys, Tyson just kept playing better and better all year. We can't take him out of our lineup anymore. Bobby's case, he was excellent early on, and then started getting scratched. We didn't want him to sit around. Went back, kind of got his confidence back, and when he came back, he was really good again. Gave us a jolt early on. So for some reason, Wade wasn't able to get the traction back, and we felt at this point it was for his own development, it might be better to have a try somewhere else and snap it out. So, we like Wade. It's nothing personal, and actually we hope that it works out better for him.
Thanks, Danny.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Danny.
You don't have any sort of update on
And that was Danny Briere. So Briere, some interesting things to say there, Bundy. I wouldn't say that anything that was like incredibly, not that it wasn't informative. I don't think there was anything earth shattering. The last thing there about Allison, I think, kind of gives you a little bit of a view into, you know, how a team kind of pencils guys in ahead of camp, and they have their projections of who's going to make it and who's going to break through. And
yeah, but hold on though. I mean, I think the tenor changes through the year. I'm going to give my opinion. When Allison came in, I don't think they really wanted him here to begin with. I don't think Torts wanted him here. And let's go back a little bit to Tyson Forster. He didn't push anybody out of the fucking lineup the first 2 months of the year. Nobody. He couldn't score. They were forcing him. Remember, they were forcing every Tyson Forster, kind of like they did the Cates last year. You know, like, and I said, and they kept shoveling him. And he's got like 16 goals. He's come along. He's power play goals. I think he's going to be a real nice player. But, you know, again, I don't think he might have now taken someone else's job, but he didn't early in the year. I just don't know if Allison is an NHL player. I mean, you have to. He's been old around now, and again, I don't think he ever really established what he should be in this league. I don't want to talk too much about Wade Allison.
Yeah, I mean, because there's no reason to. But I see what you're saying. Like,
yeah, but there's guys that listen. There's been guys that have been pushed here because the coach likes them. Noah Cates is another one last year. You know, like, I mean, we got shoveled a lot of Noah Cates last year. He ended up getting a really good contract. You know, none of those guys got, you know, Morgan Frosted.
Yeah,
Morgan Frosting. But, you know, again, but Frost would have done the same thing regardless, I think, of whether you sat him or not. He's got enough skill that he would have found points and been kind of what he is. He still is what he is. Even with the scratching, you know, you still don't get all in defensively from Morgan Frost, and you're not. Yeah. So, but again, you know, like talking about how, you know, they created a team and the culture and stuff like that. There's no doubt that's been the significant part of it. And I like what Danny said too. And I'm just listening to key things. This is this year. It's not next year yet. And that'll be the next piece of what they're going to do. And I tell you what, you can't sit here holding down thinking that this team will be exactly the same next year. Go look at the Devils. Go look at other teams that were kind of happy with what they were, and they have no goaltending. They had the injuries to defense early in the year, and you end up being who you are. So, yeah, I mean, again, when you look at the whole job that they've done at the deadline, I think that they've done an excellent job. And look at this guy. Oh my dude, he looks like bring Gorilla. Is that fucking Gorilla Monsoon? We have a Gorilla Monsoon sighting down here.
He's like when you create a player on a video game. Ant's about 2 shades darker than normal.
That's wonderful. And I just lost one of my earpods.
He looks like he's got a haircut like Hartnell right now.
He does. What the hell's going on? The man moves down to Florida. Well, I say moves. He goes down to Florida. He's tanner. It looks like his hair's grown in. What the hell? What are they doing in Florida?
It was dude. I had the windows open in the car to get here, and we were going like 80 miles an hour because I was really trying to make it in time. So yeah, the hair got a little messed up.
Everybody's on.
He went and got
it. Man, fucking Gorilla Monsoon.
He just got his hair done at Mar-a-Lago.
Oh, that's great.
Oh,
how are you, boys?
How you feeling there?
Good to see you, Anthony. We kind of covered the first 30, but what do you yeah, Dan was down there with Danny, and it just kind of looks like they did, as you said earlier, just filling in some gaps to give this team a chance. We talked about that. You can't just have a team work this hard and then give them no help at this point, right?
Like, yeah, I mean, that's the thing. And that was why we kept saying all along that this was a team that was going to sell if they could, but they might also add something here or there to be a little bit, to try and help the team with their push to make the playoffs. And I think that he did both in this regard. Like, I'm not saying that either of the guys that they acquired today, either Eric Johnson or Denis Gurianov, are going to be impact players. He did say after we turn off the camera that they're both going to be here tomorrow night and probably in the lineup. They're hoping for Johnson. They're trying to get him a flight right now to make it in time. But Gurianov will be here. And we'll see what they offer. Look, Gurianov had that, as Danny said in the presser, he had that playoff a few years ago where he was just unstoppable for Nashville, right? And then all of a sudden
he kind of fell off the map pretty quick. And so they're kind of hoping that a little bit of a reclamation project didn't cost them much because Allison was not going to have a spot here. And so they're taking a flyer there. And, Danny, like you said, they had 11 draft picks, and you can only really use so many of those draft picks, right? So moving on from a 4th-round pick in what is going to be, as everybody says, a weaker draft is not the end of the world to get Johnson. So I don't know. I don't know if he brings as much. That one doesn't interest me as much. The Gurianov one interests me a little bit more, which is why I asked about it. But nevertheless, I mean, when you move on from Walker and you have a bunch of injuries, you don't want to be playing the Phantoms defense against these big name teams night in, night out if you're trying to hang on to a playoff spot. And I mean, you'd get killed, right? So and they played a great game last night. To their credit, solid effort last night against Florida, big win for them. I think that was more on Urson than it was on the defense. I think Urson was really, really good. But nevertheless, you can't expect to play all these top teams in the NHL game in and game out and expect to beat them with half of your defense being AHL defensemen.
Yeah, I wonder if they knew. Do you think they knew last night that they'd make the Johnson play, or do you think they're sitting there going, "Hey, we got Ginning and Adder in the lineup, and this team's playing their balls off. Do we now look to give this team more support, or do you think that was something they've been working on, Ed?"
Yeah, I think it was. I don't think it was anything that was a last minute kind of one. I think the Gurianov one came together faster. I think they had been looking at Johnson as a possibility because they wanted to add, knowing they were trading Walker, they wanted to add something there because of the injuries and that they have, and they lacked a lot of depth, and they wanted to get a veteran on the blue line. But I also know that they didn't want to spend more than they did. So, they probably were looking at a few different defensemen, but anybody who went for more than a 4th-round pick, they weren't interested because they didn't want to give up those better assets. So it really was it became bargain shopping, as Danny called it, right? And that's what they went with. So, fine work. It's not anything that's sexy, right? But they got a new asset. They got 2 players to help for this year, and didn't really give up anything. So I think, all in all, it's a pretty good effort by Danny here on his first deadline.
And I just want to know what it was like. You were sitting there at a press conference. You asked not only one but 2 questions, and the answer to neither of them was.
Not answering your questions.
How did it feel? Did you feel like a professional again? Like, what was that like?
Yeah, I get questions answered by most people. I'd say 95% of the people that I speak to, covering hockey or even baseball.
Don't try to do a cheap plug for your baseball shit. Nobody's here for that, Mr. Spring Training down there with a tan. All right, I can't see what that is. I don't recognize that. You're down there for the Tampa game. Are you going to be covering the Tampa game, by the way?
I will be there. Yes, I will be. I will be in the press box tomorrow.
Will you be having a summit with, your fellow paisan John Tortorella while you're down there? What is that going to look like?
Unlikely, but we'll see. We'll see how that goes. I mean, I was surprised there are 4 other media members on this trip. We know the Inquirer goes to every trip, so Jackie's here. Charlie made the trip from PHLY, and Kevin Kurz from The Athletic. And Wayne Fish, Bundy's guy, Bundy's boy, Mr. Fish, who's been around for 50 years, he actually took this trip down as well. So
good on him.
He's been around for 80 years. He's been in the business 50. I'm watching.
That's right.
That's wild.
He better not be there. Wayne, of course, co-authored my book, right? And he was the media.
Yeah.
Is Wayne there? If he's here, he heard me say that, didn't he? He's right there.
He's not.
Okay, good.
I walked away from the press room, so that's all good. But no, so even if he doesn't want to answer my questions tomorrow, there will at least be other people there to ask him.
I really was hoping for a one-on-one. I was hoping you were going to be the only person. Have you admitted yet that you've adopted Coffee Cake yet, or not?
I have not adopted Coffee Cake.
Allegedly. We'll find out sooner or later. A lot of people, though, this is very interesting. A lot of people in the comments, and I do have to tell you, and maybe commend you, but maybe not.
Yeah.
A lot of people were commenting on your camera work.
Thanks.
They were, well, some people.
It was a little shaky.
Did you have big biceps
some people,
right now, Ant?
Some people saying that you might need some they needed Dramamine, and maybe you got to work on the upper body a little bit. But how you feeling after that?
That was fun. I actually was part of the reason it was shaky is because I kept switching hands, so that way I wouldn't get really tired with one arm holding the camera. So
Was
yeah,
was that coffee cake choking on something in that room there?
Yeah, what was that? And
No, it was
without
one of the-
breaking HIPAA, was it one of the
yeah,
reporters that was having a tough time there?
Somebody else in the press conference was having a hard time early in the conference. They got it together and were able to come back. So it was
It
good.
legit sounded like somebody was trying to summon a demon. Like at one point, there was like,
Yeah. Got to get used to the weather down here, man. It's a little different than at home.
I guess that's it. Is there anything else that you guys wanted to get to today? I mean, we had quite the experience here.
The one we were shocked at, Anthony, it's just really a weird one because you don't see them. You talked about summer deals. Tomas Hertl. That's unbelievable that they pulled that off.
Well, that the Sharks retained money for 6 years.
17% for 6 years.
It's fascinating to me. It's unbelievable. I mean, eventually it'll be meaningless. You know, when you look at year 6 at 17% of a contract with all the cap going up and everything. But nevertheless, it's stunning that teams are willing to do that. So
Yeah,
you know what though, Ant? We did have that conversation though, Bundy and I did, about, you know, when you talk about the cap going up, and I'm like, Mr. Don't burn the money on fire just because you have it. They're getting a first-round pick back as part of taking that salary on, and even though it's not going to be a high pick, you know, I guess you can maybe rationalize it. Yeah, it's going to be a late first-rounder, but the idea of like, is it worth burning $1.3 million for 6 years to have another first-round pick? If you're a team like San Jose that really does need all the shots they can get, all the bites at the apple, like, I don't know. I actually think that's one of the rare times where you say, yeah, that actually might be worth it. That might be worth the money.
It might be. It absolutely might be. So we'll see. The one thing that last thing I wanted to bring up, guys, and then we can wrap this up. I know you've been on for over an hour. I thought it was really interesting, and that's why I wanted to ask the question. Is I wanted Danny to explain to the public the same thing that he has to tell teams why he's turning down trade offers for Scott Laughton. And so I thought it was really interesting that he gave the answer that he did. That it was almost like he means more to us and to the organization and to the locker room and everybody than just fair value in a trade for him at this time. That doesn't mean that, you know, in the summer or next year, something else could happen and then you take fair value. But, you know, it's almost like you got us to this point because we didn't have Coots to be the captain last year. You took on the difficult task of bringing leadership to a bad locker room a year ago. We want to reward you with an opportunity to make a push with this team this year. And I think that Danny was upfront and honest with him about that. And I think that's commendable in a sense. And it doesn't mean, look, Danny said there were several teams that were interested. So maybe you get fair value for him eventually, but just that right now he didn't want to do it. And I think that there's, you know, I think that should mean something to the players. That, how the organization thinks of them sometimes. And I think that there is some value to that as well.
I agree.
It's definitely interesting. Listen, I think the thing that maybe is his biggest quote, I guess when it came to Laughton at least, is we weren't willing to take fair value, that a team had to kind of bowl them over.
Yeah.
And look, if this team weren't in playoff contention, I think it would have been a very fair and valid question. Like, if they weren't in playoff contention, would they have taken fair value?
Yeah, they probably would have.
Now, Ant, like, what did you get the feeling the offer was, or that teams were willing to part with for a Laughton?
I haven't figured that out yet. When I do, I'll let everybody know. But
one has to assume it couldn't have been a first, right? Because
look at Tarasenko, right? You got to look at Tarasenko deal. Other one.
I think it's possible that what they thought was fair value was a first, and that they wanted a first plus.
If they had the chance,
I'm speculating with that, but I'll find out for sure. But I think that just from conversations I've had, that might be where it needed to go.
Okay,
just saying.
It's the only thing I'll say to that is if there was, and you're not reporting that they did, if they had an offer for a first, I hope that they get that offer again in the summer, because it's very rare that you get two chances to trade a guy like Laughton for a first, and this would have in theory been their second opportunity to do it. You just hope that in the off season when teams are looking and they're poking around, that kind of offers out there. Because, well, we'll see. You'll do some digging and find out. But like, if it does come out that they were offered a first for him, I will kind of stand resolute and like that's a very ballsy call by the
now
GM.
He's only got a year left on his deal, so that offer may go down now.
Yeah, it's entirely possible. So we'll see. Anything else you want to get to there, Bundy?
A couple things actually. Tonight will be Friday Night Fights. It's at the 2300 Arena where they used to run the old ECW in South Philly. They bring in some of the guys that really chucked them hard in the 80s and 90s. Chief will be there. Dave Brown was supposed to be there, but they're bringing in a whole bunch of guys from outside the organization where a lot of these scraps happened, and it's kind of a ceremony and a big dinner. The alumni runs that Flyers charity, so it'll be a pretty cool thing. Anthony's last game, Anthony, we had Loyola against American. All we needed was win a home game against American, your alma mater, my daughters, and we lost. So we still finished second in the Patriot League, the girls, and Alexa did make first team All Patriot League today, so very proud of her. She's a junior. And lastly, is there a Tampa ceremony tomorrow night for the 20th anniversary thing?
So they're recognizing the 20th anniversary team, but they're only inducting 2 members into their Ring of Honor or their Lightning Hall of Fame or whatever it's called. Okay. Torts is not being inducted in.
Wow,
obviously he's going to be there. That was part of. It's more. I think it's Andrew Chuck and somebody else from that. I forget who the other guy is on the team that are being inducted into that Ring of Honor.
I thought they were going to get Torts there and carry him out on the ice like Rudy.
I thought. It is
some
interesting
big shoulders.
You just gotta say though, like you hope that doesn't stick with him. That's that kind of decision, something that'll stay with him wherever he goes. So maybe he'll get it recognized someday. Maybe a 25th year anniversary. Who knows? Who's to say?
Yeah.
All right, guys. I think that's probably a good place to leave it for now. The Flyers are back in action soon. We are back at Wells Fargo Center. Is it on Tuesday? I believe is the next home game.
Yeah, for you guys.
Yeah, you won't be there. And when are you coming back to us?
I will be back there for the Thursday game against Toronto, the 14th.
And you'll be back for our live show at La Sicilia, which is going around on the bottom of the screen. La Sicilia on the 16th, 5:30. The doors open. We're going to do the Press Road show, so it's going to be Flyers versus Bruins. Tickets are available at shop.snowthegoalie.com. You come out, big Italian buffet. It's going to be a great weekend. It's the night before the Flyers Carnival, so if you're looking to do a big old hockey weekend, come down to Oxford to La Sicilia. Big buffet, big show. We're going to be doing what's essentially the Press Row show, but on the road, the Press Road show. Come talk some puck. There's going to be a lot of door prizes, a lot of fun stuff. So tickets are still available. You can head over to shop.snowthegoalie.com and make sure you join us over at La Sicilia.
And thanks for our new sponsor, too.
And the best part about it is that anybody who comes to that gets to see the behind-the-scenes stuff that we always joke about that nobody ever gets to really see live on camera.
Yeah, we'll be there doing this in front of you all. It'll be great. And I promise you the food will be great. I don't know. Are we going to do Sunday? Maybe. I guess we'll see how tomorrow night goes, and won't be too early.
Oh, yeah. You're talking about like doing a morning after recap?
Morning after.
Yeah, we have to take a look at it.
Afternoon after.
I actually kind of like the afternoon after, too. We'll have to see. But the Flyers are taking on the Lightning on Saturday at 7. We would do a morning after / afternoon after on Sunday. So keep your eyes peeled to all the social channels over on Twitter, Instagram, at Snow the Goalie, Facebook.com/SnowTheGoalie. And if you haven't done so already, please go over to YouTube and subscribe to the channel, YouTube.com/@SnowTheGoalie. It's the only Flyers podcast. If you're a Flyers fan, you should absolutely subscribe. And we're available wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, wherever you get your podcasts. A big thank you to everybody who joined us today. A nice big old audience here across the Twitter, the Facebook, and the YouTube. So big thank you to everybody who found us.
Thank you, everybody. Yeah, great job.
All those of you who sent super chats over earlier in the show, thank you as well. And a big thank you once again to our new sponsor, Pennsylvania Recovery Center. Information about how to contact them in the description of this episode. For Ant, for Bundy, I'm Russ. We'll talk to you again very soon here on Snow the Goalie, the only Flyers podcast. Talk soon.